Hi, I'm Ollie Strong. I'm just enjoyed listening to the Northern Report.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, friends. Welcome to the Northern Report podcast. I'm your host, Sean Burns, and I'm coming right at you from Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. Here on the Northern Report, I aim to shine a light on emerging and existing Canadian talent, as well as some of the legends we're still lucky to have with us. My guest on today's show is Ollie Strong. Mr. Strong is a bona fide side player legend and early pioneer of pedal steel guitar pickers here in Canada, and over the course of our chat, Ollie shared a great deal of stories from his impressive career while touching on the colorful cast of characters surrounding the country music scene he was such an important part of. I'm locked down still in isolation, recovering from the COVID, and I'm looking forward to hitting the road in a few weeks, filling in on the bass with Cor Blund and the Hurtin' Albertans on the US and Canadian legs of their Back to the Barrooms tour. Hope to run into some of you folks out there. And since we last talked here, the Honky-Tonk Times has made issues available digitally. Find links, or even better, get your subscription and receive the magazine at your doorstep by visiting thehonkytonktimes.com. And though it's been a couple of months since a new episode of the podcast, my weekly radio program, Boots and Saddle, continues to air new episodes every Tuesday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central on CKUW 95.9 FM here in Winnipeg. You can stream the broadcast live and entirely for free on the TuneIn radio app, or subscribe to Boots and Saddle on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or go to the website, bootsandsaddle.ca. CKUW's annual fundraiser, Fund Drive, is just around the corner, and Boots and Saddle's Fund Drive shows will be airing February 15th and 22nd. And in addition to CKUW's offerings, we've got some very exciting show-specific incentive prizes for our donors this year. I'll be announcing those and the various pledge levels on the program next week, Tuesday, February 8th. That's all I got for you now. I want to thank you for tuning in, and let's welcome in legendary pedal steel guitar picker Ollie Strong to the Northern Report podcast. Ollie Strong's career began in the 1950s, playing steel guitar in the era prior to the instrument having pedals. He was among the first small handful of pickers in Canada to begin playing the pedal steel guitar. Noted as an early member of the house band on CBC TV's Tommy Hunter show, over the course of his long career, Ollie also backed up legends such as Ray Price, Gene Shepard, and Jim Reeves. His playing is featured on albums by Canadian heroes like Gordon Lightfoot, Murray McLauchlan, and Dick Damron, along with countless other lost Canadian country sessions on the Arc and Marathon Paragon labels by singers like Chef Adams, Brent Williams, Al Hooper, and Bill Long. He's even credited as the steel guitarist on Funkadelic's 1972 album, America Eats Its Young, and I sure wish that I had known that ahead of our conversation. He was very gracious with his time, prepared for the interview, made notes, and shared a lot of great stories. So without any further ado, here's my chat with Mr. Ollie Strong. Well, I think I came across your name looking at looking through the credits of the old records, and most notably the Chef Adams albums from the mid to late 60s.
Uh-huh.
And my father was a picker, and he ended up playing in a band for a little while with Chef's son, Randy. And so I had always heard the name Chef Adams, and I didn't really put it together. My dad did some time with Roy Payne. He was a really big fan of Mickey McGivern, and I think he played a little bit with Mark in the 70s. And so I found these Chef Adams records, Showstoppers, Chef Adams and Yvonne Terry, and singer-songwriter from 1969, and just really, really blown away by your playing and the way you and Mickey played together. So just kind of wanted to touch on that sort of era. And as I keep digging into these Paragon and Marathon records, there's a big database of really good honky-tonk and country music from that era. And you were a big part of that.
Yeah, and I got the opportunity to work with a fair amount of them. When I first started, I think I was the only pedal steel in Toronto. There was another guy by the name of Tommy St. Dennis.
Yeah.
Who was passed on just a couple of years ago, a few years ago. So I was doing I was still working day jobs and things like that. I joined the union in '55 to play with Chef.
Oh.
And I had been with a group called the Humber Valley Ranch Boys in Edna, who I met when I was about 16. Met a couple of guys, Bill and Scotty, and we were three peas in a pod there for about 2 or 3 years before we got good enough. The fiddle player Scotty was a very good fiddle player, and the rest of us just kind of struggled along for the first short time, and we would jam, we would get together to play music every Wednesday evening, and that was the beginning of it. Well, we soon got good enough that we thought we could play a dance. So we went right from the amateur end of things, and eventually we got to be fairly proficient.
This is in the 50s.
That was in the mid-50s, and I joined the union in '55 to play with Chef.
Were you from Toronto originally?
I was born in Bolton, which is just on the outskirts of Toronto now. It was a day's journey to go into the city at that time, but
yeah, I bet.
But it was about maybe 45 minutes at that time to get down to the clubs in Toronto, which I very seldom did. But we had a Sunday night. We used to do the Sunday night jamborees.
Oh, okay.
And there was a place called the Old Mill, which is on the west end of Toronto, and it was well, at that time you'd take an hour to get there. Speed limit was 50 mile an hour, and then you didn't drive all that fast at that time.
So by the time that you start playing with Chef in 1955, how long had you been playing the steel guitar? Because it is really quite a lifelong journey to master that impossible instrument.
I met the Bill and Scotty in I turned 16, so that'd be 51, and I was playing a bit of electric guitar at that time, very 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 amateurish, but enough that's what I played, and I dawdled on fiddle a wee bit when I was younger on the farm, but I wasn't proficient at that at all, but we within the year, and I can't remember whether it was the first year or the second year, we decided that we needed more sound in the band. My guitar playing wasn't filling up the holes well enough, so somebody should get a steel. Well, we couldn't lose the fiddle player, so we couldn't leave. Bill was the lead singer and rhythm guitar player, so I was the only one that was okay to get the steel and see what we could do with it.
Wow!
So when I started, I was just writing down some of the names that were players at that time in the country field. There was a couple. Al Harris was a very fine guitar player, but he played Hawaiian, like just Hawaiian stuff.
No pedals.
But there was no. This was prior to pedals. Pedals came in about 53 or 4, I think, was slowly. But I got a 6-stringer, then an 8-stringer, and this all happened within 2 or 3 months. You'd find out that you couldn't get what you wanted on one, so you got a better one, and then I got to 8 strings, then a double neck. So I progressed in probably the 2 or 3 years up to I had the first pedalist that in the country thing. Now Al Harris played an auto harp, which is a Gibson invention, and they had pedals, but it wasn't used as a country thing. It would change the whole chord. You could change all the strings with one pedal, and it never was accepted in the country end. But the country pedals came in about 53 and 54. Slowly, I think, was the first big one that was used on. I got my first pedal from Shot Jackson, which wasn't a Showbud. It was an old Fender that he had rigged up a pedal, and you could break strings faster than you could put them on. But it was a pedal, and I think I got that. Maybe in about 56 or 55. I don't think I had it when I went west. But in that era, so I had the pedal sound, the very very beginning of the pedal sound, and for some reason I learned to play fairly simple, and it sounded okay. Well, you weren't doing all the fancy stuff that the guys are doing these days, but I got a few basic things down, and I could back up a singer. I was always more into backing up a singer than I was playing instrumentals. I never spent the time to learn instrumentals.
How did you connect with Chef Adams?
Well, I guess now that I think of it, there was the Fred Rodin's store was down on Queen and down in the city somewhere, and as a budding musician, you want to go where you can hear somebody play, eh? And this would be you could win on a Saturday afternoon, and there'd be somebody sitting there playing. And I guess I met Chef doing that, and he needed a steel player, if there was one available, to go into the Brass Rail, which was on Yonge Street, just south of Bloor, I guess. So anyway, I met him some way that he said, but I had to be in the union, so I went down and joined the union.
And you got the gig,
which broke up the old band.
Right.
They were non-musician or non-union musicians.
So right into it with Chef. Like what kind of, was it 6 nights in the taverns and the bars with him for the most part in that era?
The only one I remember was the Brass Rail, and it was a 2-week thing. And I don't know that I went with Chef after that. Like, I've known him for years and played off and on with him, but I don't remember like joining the band and becoming one of the band.
Oh, okay.
Except for the 2 weeks.
What happened after that?
There's a blank in the memory, but I know I worked the Horseshoe, but I think that was later on. But at least I got in with the Toronto musicians, and at that time I was doing a lot more Sunday night shows. I don't recall sitting down and doing a lot of rehearsing, but my rehearsal was, at that time the bars were closed at 11:30 on Saturday night. So I'm doing my day job, whatever it was at the time, and I would find out. I'd go down to the Horseshoe or one of the clubs, the country clubs, and find out where the party was after 11:30, and I would be there. Well, I didn't have to pack up or anything. I just drove there, so I'd be there early, and I'd walk in and survey the room and say, well, there's a corner. I'll get back in the corner there, and by 12 o'clock or quarter after 12, the singers would come in and they'd pass the guitar around, and I'd sit and back up the singers till they weakened out and went home. And then 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, we'd pack up and go home. but that was my practice, and I was just backing up the singer. I didn't have to play any instrumentals or something, or take a break on something. And so I met a lot of the guys that were working, the guys and the girls that were working in the clubs. They knew I had a day job, and I probably wasn't ready to go in the clubs at that stage of the game. So I would do a lot of Sunday night jamborees, and I hooked up with a guy in Hamilton that was doing a Friday and a Saturday night dance, and Dick Nolan in Toronto. Dick Nolan played the Horseshoe Tavern, and Fred Hussey played the Gladstone, or a club in that same area. And this lady by the name of Ann Dunn picked up and bought the contract for a club and started an after-hours club, the Matador Club. And it was owned by 2 or 3 other guys prior to that, and they just couldn't make a go of it. They were getting a few people, but they weren't making a go. So Ann bought it. She approached Dick and took him in on a percentage, I believe. And he hired Fred, who was working up the street at the other country club, and myself to play steel. So both Dick and Fred played rhythm guitar and sang and played bass. So Fred would start out playing bass, and Dick would do the first 20 minutes or so, and then they'd switch, and we'd do the 40 minutes or the hour or whatever it took, and we'd play from an hour and a half after the club closed, or an hour after the club. So on Friday night, we'd start at, the clubs are open till 1, so we'd start at 2 till 5, and then on Saturday night, we'd start at 1 and go to 4.
And you've already done a show that evening prior to the after-hours gig.
They had done that, and I booked in with this Bernie Hughes in Hamilton. He wanted a steel player. I had met Bernie on another gig on a television show, but he run the dance at the Jockey Club on Saturday night, Friday and Saturday night. So I would go to Hamilton for 9 o'clock till, or 8 o'clock, whatever it was, and I would pack up about 10 minutes prior to the end of it, so I could get out of the place with it before the crowd started going out, and I'd boot it back and play the after hours till 5 o'clock in the morning. That was my practicing. There's
no way to compete with that, like the on the stage, like on the job learning.
Well, yeah, and you kind of develop. Now I've lost some of that. You develop the habit of playing within yourself, I call it. Not going out and trying things. You play very careful.
Yeah.
You're more there to make it sound right as opposed to impress somebody with some lick that you're going to play.
Mm-hmm. Was Roy Penny playing guitar for Dick Nolan in those days?
Yeah.
So you must have played with him too.
Yeah, I worked with Roy several times, and then, but see, he was working every night, and I still had my day job, so I wasn't ready to depend on the music, unless I got something that sounded pretty good. Then I would quit my day job and do the gig, and then when it was done, I had to go find another day job. So I did that. I worked at Avro Aircraft for twice at different times. But in between, I got a chance to do the music. So just walk away from Avro and go play the gig, and then come back and then put the application in for another job. And in between, I worked other gigs too. It wasn't Avro, just Avro.
Did you ever quit the day job for a long stretch through the 60s or 70s?
Well, getting back to, I suppose that was in the late 50s, maybe, when I worked at Avro first, because I'd done a gig in Montreal with a guy by the name of Slim Mason. Now, I don't know whether Slim ever recorded anything or not, but he was working the Horseshoe. Wally Dean, do you know that name?
No, I don't.
Okay, he was a fiddle player, and I went to Montreal with them for a 2-week contract. So I was in between gigs, in between day jobs. And I met my second wife there.
I found this record with you and Kenny Hepburn, Sleepwalk, with Ollie Strong and Kenny Hepburn from 1959. Can you tell me about that one?
Well, it was recorded in 60.
Okay.
It was recorded in 60 and released then. Arc Sound, which is the label, I can't remember, Phil Anderson, I believe his name was. He came up with the idea of putting a record, a long play record, in the stores on consignment. He put out 8 first, and I was on the second 8, and that was when Sleepwalk was on the go and a hit for Santo and Johnny. And he approached me to do a CD, or not a CD, an album with, and he would have Kenny play with me. So I figured it was going to be a guitar and steel.
Yeah.
I get into it because Kenny had put out a couple of Dwayne Eddy things, either before or after. But he's got a couple of Dwayne Eddy type guitar things on. So I had never played with him. I never met him up until the day we recorded the thing.
Wow.
So we had a bass player that I played with a fair amount, Billy Gibbs. So we knew our stuff that I would be playing, and he was quick enough. He if I played something else, he just flowed right in. Never knew the drummer before. So we go into this empty plant, like probably about 200 feet long and 150 feet deep. Like just an empty warehouse type of thing, with a little room, and he's got his recorder in the closet type of thing. And one mic sitting out in the middle of us.
Wow. And just go for it.
And just sat there and played it. And that's when I found out, hey, I got to come up with a dozen, or 10 or 12 or whatever's on it, instrumentals, and played the whole thing. Kenny just played rhythm.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there's not a guitar lick on it at all. Hence, going up the road, or one called Going Up the Road, or something like that. We didn't know what to play, so we just come up one. Didn't have a name or anything, but that's all we played. That's what we came. That we wrote it on the spot.
So where did they end up? Like, where would that record have been for sale?
Oh, it was. After that, I became known about Arc Sound, and in between jobs I needed some work, so they said, well, hey, come on in here, we got some records to ship out. I went in, and they had about a 6-foot square elevator, and I filled that 3 times in the day of where these records were being sent to, 5 in a pack. So I think there was 10 in a shipment.
Going to all the local stores?
Right across Canada.
Oh, wow. So they had some good distribution nationally, Arc did.
Well, they would put them in gas stations, drugstores, any place that there was kids to buy it. His theory was, hey, you can spend $5 and buy a Johnny Cash record, or you can spend, everything was $2.
Yeah.
$12.99. Was so $2. The kid could get two records for his $5.
Mm-hmm.
So as I understood, they didn't really sell an awful lot in the big cities, but they were in every little drugstore, every place there was a spot that he could set this display up.
That's an interesting
right
model.
Across Canada, and that was only a couple of days that I worked there.
Oh, okay.
Like just magnificent distribution.
And mostly sort of Toronto bands, all the local acts from town there getting a sniff in the studio.
Yeah, like June and George Pasha recorded Kitty Wells saying he would pick out who done whatever artist they were going to copy.
Right.
And you'd go in and you just record it, and away they went.
Well, a few years later is when I see this record with Chef and Yvonne Terry, Showstoppers. I think it's 1965, also on Arc Records. And Mickey and Mark are on that one with you.
Okay.
Was that the same kind of thing? Like you guys weren't a steady band; you were just there for the session. Just there for the session, yeah.
That's I worked. Yeah, I worked occasionally with Mickey. enough. I enjoyed Mickey's guitar playing, and he was easy to work with. And I would say Mickey trained more musicians out of Toronto than anybody else. He was just a bugger to work for.
Yeah. I heard that, and you can probably confirm this, that they would do their show, like their 6 nights a week, and after the gig, they would go back to Mickey's house and rehearse all night until like 6 a.m.
Yeah, that was, and I also heard that he had his house wired that he could record everything that was not only musically but everything else.
Oh boy! So he
was a bit. Johnny Paycheck came to Toronto to the Edison.
Mm-hmm.
This is a few years back, and of course Mickey is the house band.
They were the house band at the Edison.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and Paycheck come in with a new management company. Mickey Paycheck was famous for doing the first 2 nights and then getting hammered or whatever.
Yeah,
and not being able to finish the gig.
Yeah,
and just creating problems with the club he was working. So this new management took over, and the deal was that they would send the money to them, and they would give Paycheck like $100 a week to live on, or $200, whatever it was, and cover the bills.
Mm-hmm.
But they were going to control Paycheck. Well, that lasted until he got to Toronto. Until he got with Mickey. And it went to pot.
Oh man! So Mickey would have a vocalist, and he would just be the band leader.
Yep.
And so they're the house band, and then when they bring in the American acts, they open up or whatever, and then they back up the famous singer.
Yep. Yeah.
And the Edison was one of the better rooms at that time.
The Edison and the Horseshoe were the two country clubs that done that type of thing.
Okay.
I was involved in the Horseshoe at one point. The two names I remember backing up was Jeannie Shepard and Marvin Rainwater.
Wow. They're the third person that I've talked to this last month that got a chance to play with Jean Shepard, and I'm such a great fan of her records from that era. Her late 50s records are just some of my favorite country music records.
Yeah. Me too. Yeah, that's my wife's favorite too.
I love that sound, and she had a real sound to the with the band and her own voice. So I guess at this time you're not with a steady band for a long time. You're kind of just jobbing around here and there, or did you find a steady sort of gig for a longer stretch of time?
Well, I look back on my my history and things that I've done for like 6 years at a time or 8 years at a time.
Oh, that's good.
However, I got the Hunter show in '62 because that's when I was in Montreal, and I remember Ray saying, Ray's my wife here.
Oh yeah,
and my second wife, the second wife that became number one.
Yeah, that's a good line.
Yeah, she's sitting there beside me. So in '62, and we'll go back a year or two. I think I got a contract to do a television show out of Hamilton, the Bill Long Show. It was replacing Saturday Night Jamboree with Jack Kingston. It was a weekly television show, half-hour show, and Bill was going to get the show, and he came to Toronto to audition Tommy St. Dennis to play Steel. So I had heard about this, and Tommy was playing the Horseshoe with June and George Pasher, and so I went down to the Horseshoe, and I went to Tommy. I said, Bill's in kind of auditioning you for the television show, like a good break, eh? Are you gonna do it? And he said, I think I'd rather stay with June and George.
Oh.
I said, well, if you don't mind, then do you mind if I talk to Bill and see if I want, if it's open? So I did the television show in Hamilton. I think I did it for about 3 years, which would have taken it up to 62 or 3, and I think there's other possibilities, but one of the key things was that doing television in this market in Toronto and Hamilton, it's definitely union, and you're not allowed to be on 2 contracts at once.
Okay.
Okay.
Mm.
So there's other reports that somebody reported me that I was working in and out of the union, the local. Anyway, so I had to quit the Hamilton show. But even with the Hamilton show, like that was only one day a week, one night a week, I think, or one day a week. I was staying clear of the clubs. Like I never worked very much club work.
Okay.
On a steady basis or for very long. But I've even with the day jobs and being available, I got a lot of the Sunday night jamborees and one-nighter things. But I never got into the wild side of life, but I was around it all the time.
Sure. I mean, yeah, so then you end up getting the gig with Tommy Hunter.
About in '62, the fall of '62, I started the Hunter show. Well, then what happened financially, and that's at that stage of your game, you're depending on making a living some way. By this time, I have 2 daughters and a first wife, and I guess I bought a house and wondered how I was going to pay for it. I just started a job with a steel company, and they were going to put me through all departments of the company to learn it and then be a salesman.
Okay.
And I come home one day and there's a phone call from a guy from the CBC and wanting to know if I was interested in doing the Country Hoedown show. So I went from playing on the weekends and doing the odd gigs and getting something like maybe, I think it was $90. No, that was my first job, $90 a month. I can't remember what I was getting paid. However, I had no thoughts in the world of doing a CBC show. doing a country show. That wasn't even in my mind.
And that was on TV already by '62. Tommy was on television.
No, that was Country Hoedown show with Gordy Tapp and the Hames, and Tommy was the country singer, and Tommy Common. So I done the last 3 years of it, and Tommy's show started in '65, and I went with Tommy at that point.
And you guys are on TV once a week?
Yep.
So what's that gig like? Are you in the studio with those guys every day, getting the show prepared ahead of time for broadcast?
No, we had when we first started. I think it was only 1 day a week.
Oh, okay.
Eventually, I got my own contract for $500 a week. It was that's basic, and then if with the union deal, if you moved off the stage, you were given another 50%. If you needed makeup, you got another little percentage. If you were featured for any more than an 8-bar break, and you played another instrument, you got another 50%. I was coming home after the 15% taxes off the top. I was coming home with $600 or $700 or $800 a week.
That's excellent money. Even today, that's good musician money.
Well, my buddies, who I never considered I was the best musician, but I had to accept it. My buddies are working the bars for maybe anywhere from $100 to $125 a week.
6 nights a week and a matinee for that money.
Yeah,
and you're doing one day.
So I'm I soon realized that I better be playing more than I am. You can't your fingers just won't stay in shape. So I booked this gig in Hamilton from 8 o'clock till 9, and then beat it back and do another 3 hours at the Matador Club. The one in Hamilton, I think paid me $50 or $60 or something, and the Matador paid me $15 when I first started. I got a raise up to $20 eventually.
Wow.
For 3 hours.
Yeah.
But I needed the playing.
Sure. Yeah.
Television is fine. You're smiling all the time. You're supposed to be smiling anyway, and everybody thinks it's such a wonderful thing. But in the 8-hour day, when eventually it was an 8-hour day, and then you come in for about 6 hours for the filming of it. In the 8 hours, I might be if you recorded 8 hours and you're playing the first verse, you're back in the first verse and the second chorus or something. I might play for two hours in those 8 hours.
Yeah.
And then on the day of the show, it was live when we first started, but it was taped and rehearsed and all that. And they'd put the music in front of you, and you would maybe have 3 times through before you recorded it.
Wow. Okay, so you're on your toes.
Like only once through to record, and then you might have a third crack at it. In most cases, you had the second crack.
Are you working the day job while you're doing the Hunter show?
No, that finished the day jobs.
Oh yeah, because you guess
when I got that.
Dough. So any memorable people that you got the chance to back up on the Hunter show in that era?
Oh, between the television show and the Sunday night jamborees, the people of that era, I met a lot of them and backed a lot of them up.
Yeah, I bet.
Occasionally, like Haggard came in. Haggard brought his band in. I don't think Haggard, when I was there, I don't think he worked the Hunter show. But through that, we played the exhibition, and we were the local band. Tommy done a 45 minutes stint in front of Haggard.
Oh, okay.
the biggest thrill was Price. I got the backup Price.
Wow.
And when he came in, he's in on the rehearsal, and the piano player was his manager. He passed out the music, and he came by me, and he had already heard me playing for it. He says, we don't normally have steel players that can read anything anyway. So I've listened to you play. Just carry on when Ray comes in. Don't be offended if he doesn't want you to play, because you've got the guitar part and the string section. So he done Crazy Arms, and that's the one I remember. I said, geez, I can't hardly believe that I can't play behind Crazy Arms. He said, well, just carry on, and I'll speak to Ray, and don't be offended if he decides not to use you. So I said, that's fine with me. But he left me, and the piano player came to me later, and he says, "Did you ever think of moving to Nashville?" He says, "We got very few steel players that can work with the fiddle section like you do." Wow,
that's
well. I've been doing this for 15 years or whatever.
Yeah,
I got so that I could. I'm sitting probably 60, 70 feet away from the string section, and they've got all their written charts, and I got so that I could play against them. I wouldn't be playing the same thing as they're playing, but I would fit what I'm playing in around what they're doing. I got so I could anticipate where they were going.
Yeah.
So I was pretty honored at hearing that from him.
I bet. I mean, to me, there's no better singer ever than Ray Price.
Yeah. Well, I got to play with a few of them. As I say, Marvin Rainwater was a thrill, and like you think, geez, he's a star, eh? Oh God, I got to play with him. So I'm doing my thing of backing up the best I can, and not covering him up, getting in the way. So he came to me after the second show. He says, you know, I don't sing some of those notes very good. You better play a little louder. Play a little more.
Dig in a little harder.
I got another thing. I'll just run this briefly. I was working with this is in the late 50s, prior to the television show. I'm working with a local band called Chuck Fortune and the Chuck Wagon Ramblers. Couldn't think of it earlier. When I joined, they were working a Saturday night dance in Brampton, Junior Farmer Hall. I come up through the Junior Farmers, so I knew the hall. And I hear that he's looking for a square dance caller. Well, I knew about 6 square dances that I could call, so I approached him, see if I could call square dance, and I think I was going to get $15 for it or something like that. So I said, well, like I'm a steel player, can I bring a steel in and sit in with you to play the night? He thought he'd died and gone to heaven.
Yeah.
They got five guys in the band, 5 guitar players, rhythm guitar players.
Oh boy!
Shouldn't say that. He played a little bit of electric guitar and a little bit of fiddle. Not very good on either one of them. but there was no background, no breaks, no nothing.
Wow. So
all of a sudden, the band started. So anyway, a couple of years later, now we've got another guitar player, and hey, the band. One of the guys takes over bass, another guy plays drums. So we're coming out sounding a little more like a band. So we're tied in with one of the girls that used to sing. Her boyfriend was a promoter and booked the Palace Pier. Do you remember that one?
No.
Okay, it's a big dance hall convention center on the west end, right at the Humber Ridge River, at the west end of Toronto.
All right. Okay.
Okay. It'll hold. It's got a dance floor on the bottom, and then there's 2 layers of tables up on each side. So it'll hold probably 2,000 people in there if you want. Just a house system. No PA. Got a chance to work with Jim Reeves there and back him.
Cool.
Yeah. He came in. One of the other gigs that he booked was Johnny Cash, and there was a couple of young kids that were starting out, and you could get them for next to nothing, and Cash was in between hits type of thing, so they got him for a pretty good price. A couple of kids called the Everly Brothers.
Oh, boy.
So 6 or 8 weeks later, when the gig was coming up, Cash had Teenage Queen, number 1,
mm-hmm.
and Everly Brothers had Bye Bye Love, number 1 or 2 or whatever it was.
Yeah.
So there was nothing but a sea of heads from there to the back end.
And you backed them up too?
We didn't back them up. We opened that. No, we didn't back them. They had their own thing.
Wow. So through the 60s, and when you're on the Hunter show, you're still getting calls to do studio sessions?
In 70, 73, 4 or 5, I can't remember. I just about lived in the studio.
Yeah.
In the recording studios. You'd go from one to the other. And most of it was just going in and playing in front of the track.
Oh, it's okay. You're just overdubbing whatever's there. Yeah.
Murray McLauchlan, the song about the drunken child. Why does Daddy drink so much? He's singing it to me. That was a live thing, and Gordon Lightfoot was on the country hoedown show in the 62 when I started. He was in the background singers and the dancers singing Swing and Eight.
Oh, really?
So I knew Gordy before he was Gordon.
Sure, yeah, because you're on a record of his, Old Dan's Records in 1972.
I was doing the Hunter show at the time, but he had never used steel on a record before that. So he asked me if I'd play, and it was probably the best session that I ever worked. In that he had full control of it. There was no pressure. He paid us top dollar for it, even the rehearsal. But he booked RCA for the week, RCA Studios on Mutual Street, and we would start at 7:00, and we would go no later than maybe 1:30 or 2. And we would do usually 2 songs a night. I think maybe a couple of times we did maybe 3, but we wouldn't start a third song if we were, after 1:30. But if we had the first one, we done it right off the floor.
Oh, cool! That whole record was like that.
The whole record, and we've got. The one I'm featured on a little bit was You Are What I Am.
Yep.
Okay. When we recorded it, we've got Gordy playing eighth notes.
Yeah.
We've got a piano doing eighth notes. We've got 2 guitars doing eighth notes. We've got a 5-string banjo. We've got a drummer doing eighth notes. Everything like it's. And when we're doing the sound check, it was the first thing we done that night, and they checked all the instruments, come to the steel. Ollie, play something. I said, "There's no room." Got a chuckle.
Yeah.
Gord says, "Well, just play goose eggs. Goose eggs are whole notes, eh?"
Yeah, yeah.
So I'm just doing these goose eggs sliding into the chords. When it was all done. Yeah, it's just a whirl of eighth notes.
Yeah,
everybody playing. When it was mixed, the whole thing was mixed in California, apparently. And the producer who was doing the mixing down there said, we don't need that. We got to get rid of all that. Took it all out, just left Red Shea and myself in it. and the rhythm section.
It's a really nice record, and your playing on that album is much different than on the Chef Adams records, where you're kind of digging in and picking a little harder. On the Lightfoot record, it's really nice, complimentary steel guitar, like, folk rock kind of steel guitar, and I think that's really good contrast, from the Honky-Tonk records.
Yeah, I guess that's what the guy heard in California. Like, had I known I was going to be featured, I'd have probably played or tried something different or played a little bit more licks or whatever.
What can you tell me about Paragon and Marathon and how that worked? Were you just getting the call because you were the local steel player to be on these sessions?
I would imagine. In some of those, I don't remember.
Oh, okay.
At one point, I was as busy as anybody, and you just go in and pack up and go home. You done for Gary Buck now. Gary got into producing things. That would be in around the early 70s maybe. And I was playing rhythm guitar in a bunch of guys. Al Briscoe was playing steel. Al played with Gary a bit. So and Johnny Arpin, if you know that name, he one of the classiest pianists. And here he is sitting in a country recording session.
Who were your favorite steel players around the scene back then? Other guys that were at it like you.
Okay, when I started, of course, there was no pedals.
Yep.
And I managed to write down a few names.
Oh, great.
Lloyd Banks played the Saturday Night Jamboree, the Bill Long Show out of Hamilton, prior to the Bill Long Show.
Okay.
It was a Saturday night half-hour television show. So that was Lloyd Banks. Billy Jones played in a nightclub, which I don't think I ever went to see him in the nightclub. There was a guy by the name of Wendy Wingrove, played with the Hillbilly Jewels. Isn't that a good country name?
That's a great name, yeah.
Yeah. And I could pick them up on radio every now and again.
Okay.
There was a guy by the name of Smiley Don Thompson, who played with the Calgary Range Riders. Dixie Bill Hilton was the leader of the band, and I met him several times in Calgary later on when we were out there. Mm-hmm. And they would do a few months in Calgary, out of Calgary, and then they would come to Barrie.
Oh.
And or Aurelia, they worked out of, and they would do a radio thing out of Aurelia, and I could pick them up, and I got to go see them once in a while. Jack Mooney played the Country Hoedown before I joined them, but these were all non-pedal players.
Okay, yeah.
Billy Jones and Donnie Thompson did progress to pedals, but they could play so darn good without the pedals.
Yeah.
And pedals was a different understanding of music, different understanding. A young fellow by the name of Bobby Lucier.
I was going to ask you about Bob, because he kind of came after you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was doing the Hunter Show by that time, and at one of these all-night parties on a Saturday night, this young kid came and laid on the floor in front of me. I was set up in the corner, almost out of the room, but there was a walkway into their laundry room or something, and Bobby was the kid, and he laid on the floor watching what I was doing.
No way.
And he says, "Do you ever have this thing set up at home? Could I come over and try it?" He was working for a Firestone, I think, or a tire company anyway.
Okay.
Not working on the tires. I think he was doing some paperwork or office work or something. Anyway, he came over a couple of times, and we finally wound up ordering him a guitar. And he would get up at 7 o'clock, sit on his guitar till 10 to 8, go to work at a quarter quarter to 12 or so, he would have his lunch. At 12 o'clock, he'd go home, 2 or 3 minutes away, 5 minutes away, play guitar till 5 to 1, come back, work till 4, 4 or 5 or whatever, go pick up his girl from school, who eventually became his wife.
Yeah.
And spend a couple hours with her. She had to be in at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or whatever. Come back and play guitar till 11 o'clock and go to sleep. Do the same thing tomorrow.
Wow! And this is when he's getting started out.
That's when he wasn't playing anywhere.
Right.
So I was working the Hamilton gig at that time, and I had to leave for some reason. I can't remember what it was now, but Bernie says, anybody I could get to fill in for you, to replace you. And I said, well, there's a young kid that's just starting. I said he plays fairly in tune, and he's just learning. And Bernie had a fiddle and a guitar, so there was no pressure on how much he had to play.
Right.
So he sat in there, and I think he lasted 6 months or something, and then the same thing happened in an all-night thing in Toronto. By this time, Bob had, I guess that's when Bob had quit his day job, because this was an all-weeker.
All right.
And even then, he would play from 9 till 1. The club would close down, the caretakers sweeping up the floor. Bob would get a beer, sit there till the place was empty. Then he'd go to the stage and play his record, play the record he was trying to copy, and he'd be there till 4 o'clock or so, go home. He might have been there till 7 o'clock and picked up his girl, took her to school.
Wow. So did he do the Hunter gig after you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did he take over for you?
He started in '75, and we split the contract. He would do the recording, and I would do the live.
Oh, okay.
Thing for 3 years, and then he done the whole thing after that.
But you were getting a lot of calls to play on the Paragon Records sessions as well. Yeah. There was. I think Tommy would have been on June and George's, and maybe some others. I'm not sure. Then Buddy came on the scene. I think Bobby done some. They would just decide who they were going to record and then pick somebody that they thought would work fine, and you'd go in and you might not know what they were going to record or anything. And then maybe the odd one they'd let you know ahead of time that you could hear a little bit of stuff that they were going to copy, like type of songs they were going to do. But it was nothing that you had to do note for note. Okay. And how about, there's a fella, I've got a record of Mickey and Billy Adams. Do you remember Billy Adams?
Billy was in the Edison. Now I don't know where Billy came from.
I think he came from down east somewhere originally.
Yeah, and I don't know his history prior to the Edison or even after the Edison.
So he was like a house band at the Edison, or he was Mickey's singer or something?
He was in that house band, yeah.
Okay. Was there a steel player in that outfit?
Yeah. Who was playing steel? I know I sat in. It might have been Buddy Cage.
That sounds about right, actually. Yeah.
Might have been Buddy Cage. Buddy came. I was doing a thing at the Kingsway Entertainment Center.
Mm-hmm.
And somebody was doing they opened up a Sunday night jamboree, and I got to play that, and Buddy was just a beginner, and his teacher was Ken Neer.
Okay.
Ken Ken worked for the Ontario Conservatory.
Oh.
And Ken talked them into a steel guitar program.
Oh, that's cool.
But when I was working, I'd work the Club Kingsway, and we'd be done at 11 o'clock, I guess, and about 1:45 or 22 or 10 to, when they quit charging you to come in at the door.
Yeah.
In would wander Ken and Buddy.
Oh, okay.
Now, Buddy would probably be, I don't know whether he was out of his teens or not.
Yeah, he was a young guy.
Yeah, he was very young and young-looking. He looked to be about 14.
But he was getting pretty handy on the guitar.
Yeah, and he wound up doing he wound up doing a fair amount with Ark.
Ollie, I've taken up a lot of your time here today. I want to thank you very much for indulging me here and telling me these stories.
Well, I don't get a chance to talk my ear off. My wife sat here beside me and hasn't said hardly anything.
Well, friends, I hope you enjoyed my chat with Ollie Strong. Big thanks to Mr. Strong for taking the time to share some stories from his great career with us. Follow along with the Northern Report Spotify playlist to hear music from the folks that I've covered on the podcast, as well as in the Honky-Tonk Times column. Remember to subscribe, like, follow, share, tell a friend, leave a rating for the Northern Report. It goes a long way for the podcast, and I certainly appreciate you taking the moment to do so. Our logo was created by Boots Graham of Boots and the Hoots. Music on the show today courtesy of Sean Burns and Lost Country, The Divorcees, and Skinny Dick. From local legends to regional stars to the cream of the Canadian crop, you're going to find it all here on the Northern Report. Thanks for tuning in, folks. We'll chat later. Hey, you got anything for us?
Yeah, now here I sit, unsure if I'm all alone or is it only me.